Welcome, everyone. Welcome to our guests who are part of our panel discussion today. Welcome to all of the attendees currently joining to our session. I would like to take the opportunity to introduce cybovent for all of you who might not know us. So we are a consulting company in Switzerland, and our approach is to bring back our customers to the driver's seat by helping them manage complexity, managing the workload that is occurring on security teams day to day, by introducing innovative solutions, and we focus really on the value and not on the features of a particular solution, and really help our customers managing their challenges. A quick formal, and then we already start with the compliance part, a formal remark. The session will be recorded, so everyone who doesn't want to be part of the recording, please drop off. But also everyone who might need to drop off early, I will send out the link to the recording after the session, maybe already this afternoon or at the latest tomorrow. So you will be able to watch the recording if you have to drop off. If you do have any questions, please use the Q&A section, and I will review it and make sure that your specific questions are also addressed. So first of all, thank you for everyone who participated in our first panel discussion in March we had, and we received a lot of positive feedback. And today we have the second one, hopefully again with very positive feedback. And we want to cover a topic that is affecting more or less every organization and every member of a security team. And the question is, how can we comply with regulations and also have a positive impact on the risk the organizations are facing? So we have 3 guests today we would like to discuss this topic with. And I would ask all of my guests for a short introduction of himself. So it's easier today, no female guests. Please introduce yourself, and please let me know if about the most pointless requirement you had to fulfill in your previous life. This might be something in cybersecurity. This might also be something completely independent from cybersecurity, just to have a nice anecdote at the very beginning. Who wants to start? No predefined sequence.
Okay, if no one goes first, then I go first. So, Andreas Buchner, thanks for having me. I had the pleasure to run 30 years security organizations in all kinds of shapes and forms, risk and stuff, companies, Novartis, Deutsche Bank, UBS, Credit Suisse, and I was the HP CTO for security for 5 years. Yeah, 5 years. And so therefore, I think I've seen a little bit of something when it comes to security, especially when it comes to compliance and regulations. Regulations are there for a purpose, right? They are sometimes clearer and sometimes less. But, I would say my biggest challenge always were the things which were conflicting, the things which were green in Holland and orange in Germany. What? The same requirement, but different thresholds or different interpretations of it. And so if you are in a global organization and you have to adhere to whatever 50 plus regulators, then you just need to choose which one you can't fulfill, right? Where you are willing to pay the fine and just live with it. And so that was the biggest challenge for me, I think, over the years. And it's really nice to see that there's more harmonization going on these days. So therefore, it's good. I'm very positive about it.
Good. Then I might go next. I'm Michael Deckert from Siemens. I'm since 2006 with Siemens, and for most of the time was in different procurement roles. Joined in 2018 the cybersecurity department in the governance with focus on supplier risk management. And also since then, I'm organizing the task force in the Charter of Trust initiative, where we focus on the cybersecurity in our supply chain and try to overcome all these complexity, be it large or small companies, doesn't matter, face out there. And maybe the most pointless things I've came across during the years was when there was an aligned format and then people start to change it to make it a bit better. And from their individual point of view, it might also be reasonable, but the collateral damage typically is big, often in communication. And quite often you can then observe after a while it's changed back. And this is what I believe is maybe also sometimes the background when regulators create complexity, when there is not the focus on what is good enough or what is already there, but more the focus, how can, let's say, I leave my personal footprint or my local or regional, and then companies in global markets need to deal with it, as Andreas said.
Okay, perfect. So you mean people changing questionnaires you're sending out and adding columns and all that stuff?
I mean, it started sometimes quite small when you have, for instance, even internal templates. Everyone knows it, and then someone has the idea, but to change this aspect or that aspect makes it a bit better. And already all the others ask questions why it was changed. And in questionnaires, it's similar. I mean, often you have a wording which is already understood from people, and then someone comes with the idea, there is a better wording. And what is completely forgotten is that then you need to explain maybe to 100 or 1,000 receivers this difference, because this is what they notice. There is something different. And then they ask themselves the questions. And if this is then enwrapped in legal language, then welcome to the party.
So it might be a good thing, but it changes so much trouble that in the end of the day, it's just not it's unmanageable. Yeah, can imagine. Okay, Joachim.
Perfect. Yeah, my name is Joachim Fritschi. I'm the Chief Information Security Officer for the GLS Group, a global logistics company, mainly doing freight and mainly doing parcel and a little bit of freight. Myself have been working in security for 2.5 decades now, from very, let's say, technical security in the beginning of the career, and now managing global security teams for the last 15 years. The best and most pointless requirement was not in regulation from the government, but more compliance requirements from one of our major customers that had the great idea of defining sensitive data, and sensitive data including personal data, and then specifying that all personal data, whether it's on paper or digitally, should always be encrypted and stored in a data center. But we are a parcel company, so of course personal data is written outside on the outside of a brown box, and we typically don't want to deliver all the parcels to a data center. And when we raised this issue, their answer was, yeah, we know that, but you need to sign anyway.
That's really pointless. I totally agree. Yeah,
it's
funny, but probably not funny if you have the requirement and the consultant at the phone. Yeah,
and we discussed about it for 3 months, because it was like, no, but our headquarters demands it, but it doesn't make sense. Yeah, we know it doesn't make sense, but they still want you to sign it, and you need to commit to it. And then they sent an SAQ later on asking the same question again. We said, no, we don't comply to this. And then they said, no, but you need to provide a mitigation plan. And we were like, guys, this is insane.
But what was the end of the story? Did you encrypt the personal data, or?
It's not possible. I mean, it's legally required if you deliver a parcel that it's written in plain text on the outside of a box. And by the way, this is legal. It's also, I mean, it's part of the service. And it was we wasted a lot of time, wasted a lot of energy, and this is, I think, sometimes the most frustrating part about regulations or compliance. when you are a security guy at heart, and then you have lawyers doing stupid stuff, or people, let's say, doing like Michael said, changing the wording and making things better on paper. And the reality is just everyone is wasting a lot of times and everyone is confused, and it's not helping in improving security, really. It's more, I don't know, paper, busy work. Just keeping people busy and not really providing any more assurance or improved security.
Okay, so we are already in the middle of the discussion of my first question I have to you guys. We all know we are all security people, so we all know that being compliant doesn't mean that you're secure. So it's the other way around. It's not blocking anything, but just being compliant doesn't mean that you're secure. So I as a preparation of the panel discussion, I asked myself, why does it have to be like this? Is it not possible to write a regulation that actually makes you secure by complying already? Or where does this gap come from? The gap between being compliant and being secure. What is your opinion on that one?
I think one reason might be that typically to be secure depends on the use case and also on your own risk exposure. And if there is a regulation, then typically it has a certain degree of, let's say, to try to one fits all. So it comes with, by nature, the uncertainty in certain aspects. Sometimes they hope to cover that, to add things, which has the practical consequence that just the pure amount of topics you should look at is not possible to reach or to cover. And I mean, we had that internally as well when we tried or started a couple of years ago to really get the transparency what is there on internal ways and regulations. Then we found quite a lot. But the rationale behind it was really also the quite diverse business. And bottom line, we did stop to try to have from a headquarter perspective something described in detail which fits all. Because there's too much difference between, for instance, in our case, a train or a steering device or a software service. So from my perspective, it's that the issuers of such regulations should have in mind, on the one hand side, as we did, maybe what is already there, and maybe also instead of trying to cover everything, a little bit to focus more on, what are the proper rail guards? What is the what good is good enough? As we internally and also in the initiative typically say, you always can do more, and probably you should. But what is the critical point you definitely should start with, or what you should not miss? And I think that often gets lost if expectations of right from the beginning too complex, too complicated, focusing on a huge play field.
That's true.
Let me add to that, because I think Michael is right? So when you ever do try to heal the world, you will fail because the world is too diverse and things like that. But when you talk about regulators, you should not forget that regulators are often as well politically motivated, right? They get some pressure from the government to open up things or to close down things, to lock down things, to make things a little more complicated. So there is often not even an interest to really make this doable or make it easy, right? So first, it's nearly impossible, as Michael correctly stated, because even if you say, oh, this is a banking regulation, but what is it? It's an investment bank, a wealth manager, it's a standard bank, online bank. Oh, there's so many different variations where it never gets to consents to say, okay, you can be really precise. So you need to be somehow flexible and open. But at the same time, maybe I don't want to have someone from a different country in that segment here in the world. Okay, then I make regulations which is very hard for them to fulfill, or has such a high price, or such a big problem. And there are tons of good examples for that in the world. And so therefore, that's will most probably not go away. I mean, if you just look at the geopolitical situation at the moment, right, in the world. So with China, with Russia, with Europe, rest of the world, the US, there is no hope that this will go away soon.
I think the big difference is also, to add to that, is security is not black and white. So there's a huge gray area, and how much security is enough, it's up to your own definition. I mean, depending on the cost of implementation versus the effectiveness of the security measures. And you're also always under the constraints of let's say, internal resources, budget, etc. So you have to make the right choices for the organization. How secure is secure enough? While at the same time, compliance often comes in with a very kind of strict, this is exactly what you need to do. It doesn't consider the cost of it. Also, the effectiveness or efficiency of the measures are not taken into consideration. It's often like I think Andreas said it, it's from a moral kind of standpoint, a kind of political goal, which is well and good, but and if you don't need to pay the price for your, let's say, moral or ethical kind of standpoint, it's very easy to define measures that everyone just needs to do if you don't need to pay the price. And often, and this is also a lot of times with the regulations, they don't take into consideration the small little details if you actually need to implement it. Like, hey, don't you use US companies, like the whole Schrems discussion about GDPR. But if we want to use a modern office product, there's not so many options out there, for example. Or like in our business, for example, you need to consider that there's someone out there with a mobile phone at minus 20 degrees with gloves on who needs to access his mobile phone 200 times a day. So you can now tell him, hey, you need to have the perfect kind of password on the mobile device. Realistically, the poor guy delivering parcel will complain if you give him a 12-digit password, highly complex to enter on a mobile device with gloves on. And so, and this is where things then often go out of hand, because compliance doesn't think about practicality, doesn't think about efficiency, etc.
But I think what Joachim just mentioned shows another thing, right? It's not so much on regulations, but on internal policies. If you go through industry and you see whether you read some of the policies and how descriptive they are, and you know that they are not what statements, but a mixture of what and how statements. And then, as Joachim just rightly said, you know, if you say, okay, we need multi-factor authentication, that's something, right, that leaves it open to local organization to say, okay, the nose is good enough as a second factor to the phone, right? But if you say, oh no, it needs a password-based authentication, that's already where it becomes then tricky, right? And then you must ask yourself, you want to do the right thing, and but at the end, it's not practical, and that's often a hurdle. That's definitely true.
So you all have a lot of experience, many years. Does it improve? Is there hope, at least?
There's always hope. You know, come on. You know, will it be perfect? No, there is no way of perfect.
Yeah, I'm not expecting it to be perfect, but is it improving?
But think about it. If you look at the latest regulations and the changes, there's always a lot of drama, but they haven't come up with so many really new things. If you have a proper control framework in place, and where you say, okay, look, that's the core of what I'm operating. It doesn't matter if it's NIST driven or ISO driven, a solid control framework. And then there's a new regulation. Now there's the threshold different. Oh, now it's not 3 days notification, it's now 24 hours. That's, you know, it's not that dramatic anymore. Sure, there are things which we cannot solve. That's what it is. That will be there most probably. But, you know, when I see the consulting companies of the world running around and tell everyone DORA will be the end of all the businesses in the financial services and blah, 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 and drive everyone crazy top down, then also I sit down, oh, really? What? It's, and now we need someone on the board who can spell security. Okay, let me help you, right? But your core control framework hasn't changed that much. And even if you look at the discussion currently around AI, right? And if you are very, very pragmatic, you say AI is a piece of software, right? Okay, good. Has it changed that? No, it doesn't. Has it implications? Absolutely, right? But if you have a solid core, you can adjust a lot. And it's not, I think it's a nice way for the consulting companies to drive revenue. But I think experienced people like Michael and Joachim, I don't think you get away anymore to wake up to anything big anymore because, hey, look, it is what it is. We are used to operate that way.
Yeah, I would fully agree. Like 80 or 90% of all the regulations or compliance requirements are just good basic security best practices that you need to implement. And they all kind of reference the same best practices. I think the major things that you need to have a look at is a tiny portion of all those compliance requirements was about reporting criteria or, what are the supervisory authorities, etc. Are there any specific documentation you might need to have? But the rest of it is more the activity of mapping what you're doing already to the different compliance standards, and then figuring out also where you have conflicts, like Andrea said earlier. Sometimes you one says red and the other one says green, and you have to agree, like let's accept the risk. And I think not get overly excited with all the different compliance requirements out there. If you look at the NIS2, if you want to follow this process, this is an up and down. Every country does something differently. I think more than almost 80% of all European countries are now over half a year behind the deadline. No one cares. So I think we also need to be a bit more relaxed.
And maybe we can add a little sign of hope that it's getting better. At least this is one of our working groups in the initiative to be, before things are put into place, that there is a feedback loop also to the practical side of things, and that also out of a diverse group, we can feedback to the regulators, be it in Europe, be it in the US, what the implications might be of ideas they have already in the definition phase. And this we see in the last years works better and better, that they also reach out to us and just ask for an additional opinion. And we are still small enough to bring it up in time and diverse enough that it's not just branded from one company or industry. At least the impression is the voice is heard. Of course, it's not always then considered to the extent we would hope for, but nevertheless, I think we can place some relevant topics before everyone has to suffer the consequences.
It's true. All right, let's go to the practical implementation part. So we are all security professionals, and we know what measures make sense and what measures actually reduce risk. But our board members are not typically. They are no security professionals. So what has your approaches been, or what are your approaches to convince the board level team to support your initiatives? Is it compliance? Is it risk? Is it a mixture? What is the approach?
I think the first thing is to realize that board members are typically optimistic. If you're an entrepreneur, you run a company, you have to be optimistic. And so they're not the most risk, let's say, affiliate. They don't love risk. I mean, they like taking risk. For them, it's normal. That's why you run a business. So the kind of fear mongering, like, oh, this is risky and 4% GDPR fine, for them, it's like, well, yeah, just another topic that might hit them. So they are also a bit more relaxed than sometimes people are in security or in compliance, etc. I think mapping these risks onto their business goals, making sure they understand how these risks really impact what they want to achieve from a business perspective is probably the most important part. And also making sure that they understand where the regulation also align with their kind of interest. Because a lot of times when we talk about NIS, my first message to them was, yes, it sounds like boring regulation from the European Union, but we're doing it anyway because security is in our best interest. That's what makes our organization resilient against cyber attacks. We want to be secure. We want to be, let's say, that our customers can trust in us, and nothing else is required in this law. A tiny bit of compliance overhead, yeah, but most of it is absolutely in our own interest. And I think that really helps them to also get some perspective. And this is sometimes also necessary to make them understand how this is the entry ticket to the market. If you want to be part of this regulated market, you have to pay the price, and you cannot argue it, more or less. Yeah.
Yeah. No, I think Joachim is completely right. You need basically to link it to business objectives, and as well from the risk. But we try also to link it on the opportunity perspective. So, because often it's quite difficult to come up with a concrete number, which of course would be always best if you could say, here, this is exactly, or at least close enough an amount which it will bring, which it will cost. It is all in probabilities, and only to use the story of fear that doesn't work. What we really have seen is working is that, for instance, as us with a high digital part in our business, on the one hand side, clearly to address this is a must-have. This is the foundation of trust. If we are not cyber secure, the digital business will not be sustainable. There will not be the trust in the customers. So it's a must-have for us. But still, it's a risk-based approach. We cannot boil the ocean alone. We cannot just hire 3 times as many people as we might like to have. There are a lot of different targets also in the company, and we are one of them. We might climb the ladder in awareness, but even here we need to say that in our point of view, cybersecurity, of course, is among now the top 3 business risks. If I talk to my procurement colleagues, they hear much more often about carbon footprint, about compliance. So yes, cyber, now we more and more get to the agenda, but from the capacity they spend, we are by far not there where we would like to be. And we need to face, we also will not get just more budget or resources. So we need to find ways how to get along with more or less the staffing we have, and to make all the approaches just significant more efficient.
Lars, you know that me sitting on 3 boards, 4 now, I have this funny situation that people come and tell about security, and I think worst case, right, or a nightmare, someone sits who understands, at least can spell security. Board members are used to talk and discuss risks. So security is one risk, like many others, like Michael just said. It's IT risk, it's ops risk, there's finance risk, there's geopolitical risk, blah, 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 blah. And if you look at the WEF report, it just gives you the breadth of stuff they have to take care of. If you are a healthcare company and you develop life-saving drugs, people die if you mess something up, right? And then you put this in perspective and then, okay, oh, here I lose data, here people die. Okay, so I most probably care first about the people dying. And a lot of security people don't get that. They don't, you know, and I totally understand that. That's because we are passionate about it. It's important for us. How can you not understand me that this is the most important thing? And so that's the biggest challenge. And the people who can bring it in context and who can develop trust to the board and with the board to be accepted when Joachim comes to the board and cries, that they know he only cries if it's absolutely required. There's some status, there's regular stuff. He owns it, he knows it, he runs it. But if he cries and really yells, then we need to listen. That's the thing. That's why I'm a big believer security people should not be on a board, because 95% of the time you have nothing to add to the discussion in a board, right? And then you sit there and you just produce warm air. And that's so counterproductive to the important task we have at hand. Be there when you have something to say, be respected for what you know and what you do. And then you do a really, really good job. And I know a lot of people hate that when I say it, but you know, if you do a good job presenting and reporting to a board, these are the people who give you the next job, the next CISO role somewhere else. Not the CISOs you meet at the CISO conference, because they are competitors. A trusted board member, they go, oh, look, we had this guy here, there. That's the way, that's the trust, that's the future.
That's true. So we need a consistent and continuous messaging, and we need to focus on what they care about and not the latest and greatest technology they care about.
Be careful.
Yeah? No?
Be careful. What they care about, sometimes they don't know things, right? And you need to make it something which they need to care about. There is a part of education, but it's the language you're using to make them understand. If you can relate it to say, look, if this goes wrong, this production goes down, we will not be able to ship, and as a consequence, people may die. That's something you need to explain and to illustrate. And then the people, oh shit, I have never thought about that. Often to put things in perspective for in personal life, right? Because a lot of us are parents, are kids and whatsoever. Sometimes they're all humans, very normal, trusting humans. If you can make it relevant, being it either they're car guys or family guys or girls, whatsoever, that makes you as a trusted partner. And sometimes you need to yell, right? Or you need to cry. But if you always cry, you're just a crying baby, and you get into the department where you, you know what I mean.
Yeah, that's true. All right. Yeah,
Michael, as I said, I mean, and this is often maybe under rated skill, that you need people who understand the language. I would say not just from the board, but also from a lot of other departments. You know, at the end of the day, it's about the collaboration from many, and you only get the message across if you understand what triggers your colleagues, in what target setting do they live. I mean, this is what, for instance, I am as really someone from the side. I spent most of my professional life in procurement. And so I often have first to clean up with prejudgments. So like, oh, this is the supplier that's not good in cyber. Yeah, then we take another one. Then typically I say, forget it. I mean, there is in 99% of the cases no other one which can provide you the same things while you choose them, and which is just more cyber secure. So forget it. It is more that you can better decide upon the risk your supplier faces, and therefore you might face, and then you better think about how to develop them to the level they need to be, and also to be aware this is a process. This is not just to set the target and then watch a year after, oh, did they do it? No, this is like every development. hard work, continuous communication, and hopefully in a consistent approach that it's also doable for both sides, for the messenger and for the receiver.
Yeah.
And therefore, yeah, I agree. If you would send a purely technician in such a board round, maybe talking about vulnerabilities and what all bad things could happen, most likely that will not fly. If you can link it to consequences, but hopefully also to opportunities, and maybe in a story which is understandable, because maybe an example out of private life, I think that works. At least that's what I can observe.
Yeah, and also have a solution, not only coming up with problems, also
Yeah,
have
sure.
a solution that is feasible and that works and that is implementable.
To have a proposal always helps.
Yeah. All right, so let's go into really the implementation of compliance requirements. So if you look back at the specific requirements you had to deal with, what is your approach to find suitable measures? Let's assume that it's not already covered by the existing control framework. So what is your approach to find a suitable solution that is compliant on the other hand as well?
I mean, for us, it's clearly to start with, let's say, the common ground, which is the overlap from the existing standards we use within Siemens, but also which are used from our charter partners. Because what we have seen is, for us, typically, the problem is not or are not the high-risk suppliers or the biggest ones. They often have their specialized teams. They have a lot in place. They have good processes, can provide you lots of documentations. But you have these hundreds and thousands of small and medium enterprises, which are very often not considered at all, or where there's no transparency. And what we have seen over the last years now is that it works quite well to start with the topics defined from practitioners, where they would say, okay, this is the best investment if you need to start or if you need to check something. Because this is not just compliance, that is really creating impact to protect yourself, to protect your customer. And if this is also aligned and mapped to the most relevant standards, for us, it's an IEC 62443 or the ISO 27001. Then it also doesn't matter what further requirements other customers might have, because in most cases, they build on the same frameworks and standards. So you cover the most relevant topics for most likely the majority of your customers if you start there. And if you can then build it in a modular risk-based approach. And here we really had very positive feedback as well from our colleagues, which see a chance to do some more without having right away more capacity. And also from the supplier side, that they see a chance also to provide at least some transparency, often in a very limited time. As in the past, it was often the case, then they have just been approached with a huge catalog, and please answer it in a week. So, and then there was the clash. I need it, I can't, but I need it, and I can't. A little bit like Joachim said, with this requirement which doesn't make sense. And this we almost don't have anymore.
It's a cooperation rather than just top-down approach. Yeah.
And it's really, I think, important to have it as a stepwise approach, being aware you cannot expect having all answers within a week or two. And to start with an initial transparency with the most relevant topics is always better than to have no transparency. Or a good one for one, but the other 9 out of 10, you just have no capacity left. That's the practical consequence. And this puts both groups, so the cybersecurity colleagues in our teams or the procurement colleagues, and also the suppliers in a better position to reflect the available time and capacity on both sides, and then to take it from there. And we typically say, if you find already the first gaps in the initial questions and really the basics, then focus closing these gaps first. It doesn't make sense to right away send them the next 100 questions. And it just works. That's
Yep.
And use standards. I mean, we could convince our colleagues that we don't need a Siemens wording all of the time. We really start using common frameworks like questions from a cake, from a SIG, and we reference them really 100%, so that we hopefully can completely build on already the understanding, the communication from these organizations. And we could convince our internal colleagues that for this purpose, it's good enough. The details come, if needed, significant later.
I think when it comes to addressing new compliance requirements or identifying measures to do it, I think that the first step is really being having a lot of scrutiny. Is it really necessary and applicable? Because a lot of times people are very quick to jump to, we need to do this because the law says X, or instead of really drilling into the requirements. Does it already match controls we have, or can we extend an existing control, or is it even applicable for our industry, for this use case, etc.? Because people start reading just one control in the whole law, and you need to look in the appendix, and then you figure out, but there's thresholds to consider or something like that. So a lot of times people jump to conclusions to all those things that you need to do, but when you go into the details, you figure out it's not really applicable, or you need to read it in a certain way, etc. Because I think my intention is always reduce the compliance requirements to the minimum. Never gold plate anything. Really make sure you figure out exactly what you need to fulfill and what's the minimum you need to do to fulfill the requirements, because you're not winning anything with, let's say, doing too much. No one cheers for that. And then on the other side, sometimes also taking a bit of a risk to say, what is good enough? If you think about NIS2 right now, no one exactly knows what they mean with identity and access management. They just spell out identity and access management. Does that mean all business critical systems? Does it mean all systems? Does that mean just the core systems that are relevant for your critical measures that you're doing? So the law is quite unspecific. So you also need to come up with a good argument on why are you doing exactly what you're doing and not even more. Because if you ask one of the big fours, they will tell you you need to do this in every system to the highest degree and highest maturity level, and that's financially suicide, I would say. Or on the other way, for me, and this is something I like the term, something like security level management. It doesn't make sense that you go into maturity level 4 or 5 in certain areas when other areas are still at 1 or 2. So you also need to slowly ramp up the maturity across the board, because in an audit, having a small finding is not a problem. If you have major deviations, etc., that's a problem. But if someone says, you could improve this, it's like, sure. You can always improve everything that you have in terms of security controls. But especially when it comes to regulatory requirements, you don't want to have major deviations or major findings. The small stuff is sometimes, I would say, an acceptable risk.
That's true.
In addition, I think most it's covered, but also there is a way to work smart, not hard, right? So as you know, there's always the technology side, there's the people side, and there's the process side. Technology side, you ask 1-2 vendors, they will all tell you what they have and because they invest money into it, because that makes them successful, right? So technology side is never an issue, really, but the process side, right? And as we just do here, right? Joachim most probably doesn't do the things completely different than Michael does. get your cats together, speak with each other. What are you doing? How far do you go? You remember we all started with 80 controls on SOCs. Now every one of us has 2 or 3 remaining. It's just a standard behavior. We completely overdid it over time. We figured out, oh, that's okay, that's good enough. That, as Joachim just said, good enough level, and overdoing, you don't get a prize for doing too much. Talk with each other. And if 2, 3 companies, especially bigger ones like Siemens or Mercedes, do something and say, this is good enough, no regulator will go after someone else's smaller one and say, oh, no, you need to do more. You know, there is a benchmark. There's always a threshold benchmark somewhere. And by aligning in the industry, you can do a lot. The industry has a lot of power. Work smart, not hard.
And this approach, organizations like the Charter of Trust, Michael is referring to and working in, this is really something that has this platform for communication, for exchange, and for learning. Absolutely true. Yeah. All right. So let me ask you one final thing. Do you have a recommendation for our audience, for our attendees? Maybe something you wish you had known years ago? What is your key recommendation in the area compliance versus risk, getting the board convinced and all that stuff we discussed?
Happy to start. You know, think before you do. That's definitely, you know, we have, at least in my days, we have done so many, we have reacted to so many requests, we have accepted far too many audit results, and you know, instead of challenging it back and saying, hey guys, what's really in there, what is really the risk, you know, written to it's clear, but you know, why? And there's so much, we have developed as an industry so much further than a couple of 20 years ago. So therefore, really work smart, talk with people, align, also take the auditors and the regulators on board. Like Michael said before, they are struggling with the same things, right? Make it clear, saying, hey, but why is that not working for me? Most probably they have no idea. They've never thought about it. And so what is a workable workaround, right? And again, get 2, 3 partners on board which are also have some muscle power, and that's the way you benchmark, that's the way you set ground levels. And just running on your own and say, oh, I solved that, costs a lot of money, as Joachim said, doesn't get you a trophy. And you know, this is, keep it simple, keep it personal, develop trust in both directions. Auditors are not enemies, they can be your friend. Regulators are not all idiots, they do a proper job, they want to do the right things. Get them involved, and then you make a much better game, or you play a much better game than whatever you could do on your own.
That's true.
Maybe it resonates to that quite well. Is I would always suggest first look what's already out there before you right away start developing own things. I mean, we have seen that in the past quite often. As an engineering company, of course, we typically believe we can do it better than anyone else. And also in the own house, many departments believe they can do it better than the colleagues in the neighbor department. And especially for this complex topic of cybersecurity, I believe we can save a lot of effort if we concentrate on what is already out there, where are very good communities also working on topics, keeping them updated, keeping them available in relevant languages, and so on. So, and then really to have the freedom focusing on the specifics where really the differentiator might lay, or where the, let's say sometimes also for technicians, interesting stuff is, and not to waste the energy with common ground already covered. Good.
Don't reinvent the wheel. That's true. Yeah.
Yeah, not much to add from my side. I think I would put in two words. One is efficiency and effectiveness of the measures, really making sure that what you're doing is not like reinventing the wheel, or the other one is really all about compliance is just overhead for the business. It's not adding value itself. It's not creating value. I mean, it's getting you an entry ticket into a market and makes your customers happy, but it's not what you're selling typically, unless you're one of a few companies. And so really making sure you're really efficient and you try to make it lean. Also arguing with the auditors, not accepting every finding or argument they have, and really making sure that you keep a lean ship, I think is really important there.
Okay. So perfect. Thank you to the panel. Thank you to all of our attendees. If you want to learn more, if you have any questions, just reach out to us. We plan one additional online panel discussion probably in November. The date is not fixed yet, but probably around about November. If you have any topic you want to learn more about, you want to maybe also open for being our guest, just reach out to us. Probably soon starting the planning for the November session. And maybe some outlook to some live events we are planning for the rest of the year. We will be on ITSA with our own stand in Nuremberg in October, and it's our 5th anniversary. We're probably celebrating with hopefully Andreas, maybe also Joachim and Michael in Zurich, probably also in November or December. And now it's up to the last administrative stuff. I will send out to everyone the people who were able to join the whole session. I will send out the link to the recording later today or tomorrow, so you can also share it with your peers if you think this might be interesting. And then it's the last thing. Have a great remaining afternoon. Thank you for joining us, and we'll see you soon. Bye bye.
Thank you.
Thanks, Lars.